The fluorescent lights of Jefferson High's main hallway buzzed like angry wasps, casting their harsh glare across the polished linoleum that reflected the hurried footsteps of students rushing to their next class. I pressed my back against my locker, clutching my physics textbook to my chest like armor, watching the chaos unfold around me with the practiced invisibility I'd perfected over 3 years. My name is Luna Chen, and until today, I was nobody. The four. We jump back in. Tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Move it, freak. The voice cut through the ambient noise like a blade. I didn't need to look up to know it belonged to Marcus Steele, 6'3", of pure arrogance wrapped in a letterman jacket, with the kind of cruel smile that made teachers look the other way and parents dismiss concerns with boys will be boys. His entourage flanked him like loyal hyenas, all designer sneakers and practice sneers. I tried to make myself smaller, to blend into the metal of my locker, but Marcus had already spotted me. His eyes, the color of winter ice, locked onto mine with predatory focus. The hallway seemed to slow, conversations dimming to a low murmur as students sensed what was coming. "I'm talking to you, China girl." The racial slur hit me like a physical blow, but I kept my expression neutral. 3 years of this had taught me that reaction only fed the beast. I was Korean American, but Marcus had never cared about accuracy. Cruelty was his language, and precision wasn't required. "Please," I whispered, my voice barely audible above the hallway noise. "I'm just trying to get to class." Marcus laughed, a sound devoid of warmth. "Did you guys hear that? It speaks." His friends joined in, their laughter sharp and cutting. What class would that be? Invisible Loser 101? I felt heat creep up my neck, the familiar burn of humiliation that had become my constant companion. Around us, students had formed a loose circle, some filming with their phones, others just watching with the morbid fascination reserved for car accidents and public humiliation. "Leave me alone," I said, my voice still soft but carrying a note of steel that surprised even me. Marcus stepped closer, invading my personal space with the casual entitlement of someone who'd never faced real consequences. His cologne was expensive and overwhelming, chosen to announce his presence long before he entered a room. "Or what? You'll bore me to death with your weird silence?" That's when Zoe Martinez appeared beside him, her perfectly straightened blonde hair catching the light as she flipped it over her shoulder. Once upon a time, in elementary school, we'd been friends. We'd shared juice boxes and whispered secrets during nap time. But high school had a way of reshaping people, and Zoe had chosen popularity over loyalty. "Marcus, baby, come on," she purred, sliding her manicured hand up his arm. "We're going to be late for study hall." Her eyes met mine for just a moment, and I saw something flicker there, maybe regret, maybe pity. Both felt equally sharp. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. But Marcus wasn't done with his performance. The crowd was watching, phones were recording, and his reputation as Jefferson High's apex predator demanded a finale. "You know what your problem is, Luna." He leaned in closer, his breath hot against my ear. "You think if you stay quiet and invisible, we'll forget you exist. But freaks like you, you're impossible to ignore." His hand shot out and shoved me. Hard. The physics textbook flew from my grasp, its pages fluttering like broken wings as it hit the floor. I stumbled backward, my shoulder blade connecting painfully with the edge of an open locker door. The sharp metal bit into my skin, and I felt something warm trickle down my back. But it wasn't the physical pain that broke something inside me. It was the laughter. 20, maybe 30 students stood in that hallway, watching Marcus assault me, and they laughed. Some nervously, some with genuine amusement, but they all laughed. 3 years of invisible suffering crystallized into this moment, This public degradation that would be shared on social media within minutes. I straightened slowly, my dark hair falling across my face like a curtain. When I looked up, something in my expression made Marcus take an involuntary step back. "That was a mistake," I said quietly. The words hung in the air like a challenge, and for a moment, Marcus looked uncertain. But then his masculine pride kicked in, inflated by the watching crowd and the need to maintain his image. "Oh, really?" He cracked his knuckles theatrically. "What are you going to do about it, little mouse?" I bent down and picked up my textbook, checking for damage to its spine. The gesture seemed submissive, defeated, and I could feel the crowd's attention wavering. They were expecting tears, maybe a run to the bathroom or the counselor's office. They were expecting me to disappear. Instead, I stood up and looked Marcus directly in the eyes. "I'm going to show you why you should never underestimate the quiet ones." Before he could process my words, before his reflexes could engage, I moved. My right index finger shot forward with surgical precision, finding the exact pressure point where his neck met his shoulder, the brachial plexus, a network of nerves that, when struck correctly, could cause immediate unconsciousness. The technique required precise knowledge of anatomy and perfect timing, skills I'd acquired through years of study that had nothing to do with high school curriculum. Marcus's eyes widened in shock, then rolled back as his massive frame went limp. All 6'3" and 200 pounds of him crumpled to the hallway floor like a marionette with severed strings. The silence that followed was deafening. Zoe screamed, dropping to her knees beside Marcus's unconscious form. "Oh my God, Marcus! Someone call 911. Her voice cracked with panic as she shook his shoulders, trying to rouse him. The crowd pressed closer, phones now recording not cruel entertainment, but genuine emergency. I heard fragments of panicked conversation. Did she just kill him? How? Did she do that? Is he breathing? Someone get a teacher. I stood motionless in the center of the chaos, my textbook clutched in my hands, watching as Marcus's friends, his loyal followers who'd laughed at his cruelty, moments before now scrambled to help their fallen leader. None of them looked at me. It was as if I'd become something dangerous, something to be feared rather than dismissed. Principal Williams burst through the crowd, his usually perfect tie askew and sweat beading on his forehead. "Everyone back, give him space." He knelt beside Marcus, checking for a pulse with hands that shook slightly. "Someone call the paramedics now." His eyes found mine across the circle of students. "Luna Chen, you need to come with me." Immediately, I nodded, unsurprised by the request. There would be consequences for what I'd done. Suspension, probably. Expulsion, possibly criminal charges. But as I followed Principal Williams through the parting crowd, stepping over Marcus's still form, I felt something I hadn't experienced in 3 years of high school. Hell.peace. The administrative office smelled like industrial coffee and stress-induced perspiration. Principal Williams gestured for me to sit in one of the uncomfortable plastic chairs across from his desk while he paced behind it, his phone pressed to his ear. "Yes, I understand the seriousness. No, she's cooperative, 17 years old. Yes, we're waiting for the paramedics now." Through the office window, I could see the ambulance pulling into the school's circular driveway, its red and blue lights painting the autumn afternoon in urgent colors. A small crowd of students had gathered on the lawn, their faces pressed against the glass like spectators at a zoo. "Luna." Principal Williams ended his call and settled into his chair, his expression a mixture of confusion and concern. "I need you to help me understand what just happened out there." I met his gaze steadily. Marcus shoved me. I defended myself. "Defended yourself?" His voice rose slightly. "That boy is unconscious. The paramedics are on their way, and you're sitting here like nothing happened." "He'll wake up in a few minutes," I said calmly. "The pressure point I struck causes temporary unconsciousness, not permanent damage. His vital signs are stable." Principal Williams stared at me as if I'd sprouted a second head. Pressure point? Luna, where did you learn to do something like that? Before I could answer, the office door burst open and my grandmother shuffled. In her small frame wrapped in a faded cardigan that had seen better decades. At 78, Helen Chun moved with the deliberate care of someone whose bones remembered harder times, but her dark eyes so similar to my own blazed with protective fury. "Where is my granddaughter?" she demanded in her slightly accented English, the result of arriving in America as a young bride 50 years ago. "What has happened? Mrs. Chun, please sit down." Principal Williams gestured to the chair beside me. "We're trying to understand." "I understand perfectly," Grandmother interrupted, settling beside me and taking my hand in her weathered one. "Bullies push, Luna pushes back. This is surprise to you." The principal rubbed his temples as if fighting a headache. "Mrs. Chun, your granddaughter didn't just push back. She used some kind of martial arts technique that put a student in the hospital." "Not hospital," I corrected quietly. "He'll be awake soon." I was very careful about placement and pressure. Grandmother squeezed my hand, and I felt her approval in that simple gesture. She'd been the one to teach me that technique, along with dozens of others, during the long afternoons we'd spent together after my parents died. But that was a story for another time, another conversation. "My Luna is good girl," Grandmother said firmly. "She does not start trouble, but she finishes it." Principal Williams opened his mouth to respond, but was interrupted by Officer Janet Rodriguez, Jefferson High's resource officer. She was a compact woman in her 40s with kind eyes and the no-nonsense demeanor of someone who'd seen too much. "In her 20 years of law enforcement, how's our situation?" she asked, closing the door behind her. "The boy is conscious now," Principal Williams reported, relief evident in his voice. "Paramedics are checking him out, but he seems okay." Confused, but okay. Officer Rodriguez turned to me, her expression unreadable. "Luna, I need to ask you some questions about what happened in the hallway." I nodded, having expected this moment. Marcus Steele shoved me against the lockers. I struck a pressure point on his neck, causing him to lose consciousness temporarily. I used only the minimum force necessary to end the threat. "The minimum force necessary to end the threat," Officer Rodriguez repeated slowly. "That's very specific language, Luna. Where did you learn to talk like that?" Grandmother's hand tightened on mine, a warning to be careful with my words. There were secrets in our family, stories that weren't meant for school officials or police. "Reports. My grandmother taught me self-defense," I said simply. "She believes girls should know how to protect themselves. Self-defense doesn't usually involve pressure points that can knock someone unconscious." Officer Rodriguez observed, "That's pretty advanced stuff." Before I could respond, the office door opened again and Marcus stumbled in, flanked by the paramedics and looking like he'd been hit by a truck. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his letterman jacket wrinkled, and his ice blue eyes were clouded with confusion and something I'd never seen there before: fear. "I want to press charges," he announced, his voice hoarse. "That freak attacked me." The room fell silent. Grandmother rose from her chair, all 5 feet of her radiating an authority that seemed to fill the space. "You pushed my granddaughter first," she said, her accent becoming more pronounced as her anger built. "Many people saw this. You are bully, and bullies must learn consequences." Marcus's face flushed red. "I barely touched her. She could have killed me." "But she didn't," Officer Rodriguez interjected calmly. "In fact, according to the paramedics, you're completely fine. No injuries, no lasting effects. She still assaulted me." "After you assaulted her first," the officer pointed out. "And according to multiple witnesses I've already spoken with, this isn't the first time you've targeted Luna. In fact, from what I'm hearing, you've been bullying her for years." The fear in Marcus's eyes intensified as he realized the narrative wasn't going the way he'd expected. He was used to being believed, to having adults take his side by default. The reality of facing actual consequences for his actions was clearly foreign territory. "This is ridiculous," he blustered. "She's dangerous. She shouldn't be allowed in school." "The only dangerous thing here," grandmother said quietly, "is boy who thinks he can hurt others without facing justice." Principal Williams cleared his throat. "Regardless of the circumstances, we have a zero-tolerance policy for violence. Luna, you're suspended pending a full investigation." I nodded, having expected as much. "How long?" 3 days minimum. "Possibly longer depending on what the district decides." "What about him?" I asked, nodding toward Marcus. "He assaulted me first." "That's under review as well." I could hear the inequality in his hesitation. Marcus would get a slap on the wrist, maybe a day of in-school suspension. I would be made an example of, a cautionary tale about what happened when the quiet ones fought back. "Come, Luna," grandmother said, standing and gathering her purse. "We go home now." As we walked toward the door, Marcus stepped into our path, his face twisted with humiliation and rage. "This isn't over, freak. You think you're tough now? Wait until everyone sees what you really are." Grandmother looked up at him with the serene confidence of someone who'd survived war, poverty, and decades of American discrimination without breaking. "Grandson," she said sweetly, "you have no idea what Luna really is, and if you are a smart boy, you will never find out." The drive home was quiet, the late afternoon sun filtering through the windows of grandmother's ancient Honda Civic. She drove slowly and carefully, her small hands gripping the steering wheel as she navigated the familiar streets of our neighborhood, collection of modest homes where working families struggled to maintain middle-class respectability. "You did well today," she said finally, breaking the silence. "I'm suspended, grandmother, maybe expelled. You defended yourself with honor. That is more important than their schools and their rules." I stared out the window at the passing houses, each one holding its own collection of secrets and struggles. Everyone's going to think I'm some kind of monster now. Grandmother pulled into our driveway and turned off the engine. The sudden silence felt heavy with unspoken words. "Luna," she said, turning to face me, "do you remember stories I told you about my mother? About why we came to America?" I nodded. Grandmother's mother had been a fighter in the Korean independence movement, a woman who'd used her medical knowledge and martial arts training to resist Japanese occupation. She died when grandmother was young, but not before passing on her skills and her understanding that sometimes violence was the only language oppressors understood. "Your great-grandmother would be proud of you today," grandmother continued. "You showed restraint. You used only enough force to stop the threat. You honored the training she passed down through me to you." We sat in the car for a moment longer, the weight of family history settling around us like a comfortable blanket. I was the 4th generation of women in my family to carry these skills, this knowledge that came with both power and responsibility. "What happens now?" I asked. Grandmother smiled, and for a moment, I could see the young woman she'd once been, the one who'd crossed an ocean with nothing but determination and her mother's teachings. "Now," she said, "we prepare. Because that boy was right about one thing, this is not over. But he has no idea who he is dealing with." As we walked toward our small house, I felt the first stirring of something I hadn't experienced in years: anticipation. For 3 years, I'd been Marcus Steele's victim, Jefferson High's invisible girl, the quiet one who absorbed abuse and never fought back. That girl died in the hallway today. The question now was, who would rise from her ashes? End of part 1. What happens next? Luna has crossed a line she can never uncross. Marcus Steele lies unconscious, the victim of a technique that shouldn't exist in the hands of a 17-year-old girl. But as secrets begin to unravel and Luna's true capabilities surface, the real question becomes, just how far will Marcus go to restore his damaged reputation? And what other skills has Luna's mysterious grandmother passed down through generations? Of women who learned that sometimes the only way to survive is to fight back. The stakes are about to get much higher. The suspension letter arrived by email at 6 a.m. the next morning, officially barring me from Jefferson High's campus for a week pending further investigation into violent conduct. I deleted it without reading the full text and padded to the kitchen where grandmother was already awake, preparing her morning tea with the ritualistic precision she brought to everything. "They're scared," she said without looking up from the steaming cup. "Good. Fear brings respect." The doorbell rang before I could respond. Through the peephole, I saw Officer Rodriguez standing on our porch, her uniform crisp despite the early hour. Grandmother opened the door with the weary resignation of someone who dealt with authority figures her entire life. "Mrs. Chen, Luna," Officer Rodriguez nodded to each of us. "I need to speak with you both. May I come in?" The living room felt smaller with the officer's presence, her equipment belt creaking as she settled into grandmother's floral armchair. She pulled out a small notepad, but her pen remained capped. "There's been a development," she began carefully. "After you left yesterday, more students came forward. Apparently, Marcus's treatment of Luna wasn't an isolated incident." I kept my expression neutral, but inside, something flickered. Hope, maybe, or vindication. "What kind of treatment?" grandmother asked, though her tone suggested she already knew. 3 years of systematic harassment. Racial slurs, physical intimidation, destroying her property, encouraging others to exclude her. Officer Rodriguez's jaw tightened. "And here's the thing, several students have video evidence. They've been recording his behavior for months." Thinking it was entertainment, the irony wasn't lost on me. The same phones that had captured my moment of retaliation had also documented years of Marcus's cruelty. "So what happens now?" I asked. "The district is reviewing everything. Marcus could face serious consequences, suspension, possibly expulsion if the pattern is as extensive as it appears." She paused, studying my face. "But Luna, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." Grandmother tensed beside me, her teacup rattling slightly against its saucer. "That technique you used," Officer Rodriguez continued, "that's not something you learn in a basic self-defense class. I've been a cop for 20 years, and I've only seen pressure point strikes like that from people with very specialized training. Military, law enforcement, or..." She let the sentence hang, waiting for me to fill in the blank. "Or what?" I asked, though I suspected where this was heading. "Martial arts disciplines that most people have never heard of. The kind taught in very specific circumstances to very specific people." Grandmother set down her teacup with deliberate care. "Officer Rodriguez, my granddaughter is 17 years old. She is not soldier or spy or whatever you think. She is student who was pushed too far. I understand that, Mrs. Chen, but the precision of that strike, the anatomical knowledge required, that suggests training far beyond anything civilian." The silence stretched between us, heavy with implications. Finally, grandmother sighed, the sound carrying decades of carefully guarded secrets. "You want truth?" she asked. "I give you truth." She rose and walked to the oak cabinet that dominated one wall of our living room. From a locked drawer, she withdrew a small wooden box, its surface worn smooth by countless handlings. Inside, wrapped in faded silk, lay a collection of items that told a story I'd only heard in fragments. "My mother's medical certificate," grandmother said, laying out yellowed documents. "From Seoul National University, 1943, she was studying to be doctor when Japanese occupation became too much to bear." Next came a faded photograph of a young woman in traditional Korean dress, her expression serious and determined. She joined resistance movement, used her medical knowledge to treat wounded fighters, but she also learned other things. How to heal, yes, but also how to... She paused, searching for the right words. How to stop people quickly, quietly, when healing was not option. Officer Rodriguez leaned forward, studying the documents with professional interest. After war, she came to America with my father. Brought her knowledge with her, but never spoke of it. Too dangerous, too many questions. Grandmother's fingers traced the edge of her mother's photograph. She taught me. I taught Luna's mother. And when Luna's parents died in that car accident 5 years ago, responsibility fell to me. The room felt charged with revelation, years of family history suddenly exposed to official scrutiny. You taught her pressure point techniques when she was 12 years old, Officer Rodriguez asked. I taught her to survive, Grandmother corrected firmly. Luna was target even in middle school. Small, quiet, different. Bullies smell weakness like sharks smell blood. So I gave her strength they could not see. And you never thought to report the bullying to authorities? Grandmother's laugh was bitter. Officer Rodriguez, you seem like good woman. But you are. Police, yes? How many reports of bullying do you think result in real protection? How many times do victims call for help and receive only words, only promises that nothing changes? The accusation hung in the air, and I saw Officer Rodriguez wince at its accuracy. Luna learned to protect herself because I learned long ago that no one else will, Grandmother continued. You want to arrest her for using skills I taught her? Then arrest me too. I am the one who showed her how to find that pressure point. Mrs. Chen, I'm not here to arrest anyone. Officer Rodriguez closed her notepad. I'm here because what happened yesterday is forcing everyone to confront some uncomfortable truths. My phone buzzed with a text notification, then another, and another. Someone leaked the video, I said, scrolling through the messages flooding my screen. The hallway confrontation had gone viral overnight, shared across every social media platform, with captions ranging from supportive, girl destroys bully with one finger, to sensational, teenage assassin hidden in plain sight. Shit, Officer Rodriguez muttered, then caught herself. Sorry, this complicates things. The doorbell rang. Again, more insistent this time. Through the window, I could see a news van parked across the street, its satellite dish extended like a metallic flower seeking signal. Mrs. Chen. Luna. A voice called from outside. Channel 7 News. We'd like to speak with you about yesterday's incident. Grandmother moved to the window and peered through the curtains. More coming, she announced grimly. 3 vans now. My phone continued its electronic symphony of notifications. Messages from classmates who'd never spoken to me, friend. Requests from strangers, interview requests from news outlets and podcasters. The quiet girl who'd spent 3 years invisible had become an overnight internet sensation. We need to get ahead of this, Officer Rodriguez said, pulling out her phone. The narrative is already spinning out of control. But even as chaos gathered, outside our modest home, I felt strangely calm. For years, I'd carried the weight of secrets, the burden of skills I couldn't use and knowledge I couldn't share. Now with everything exposed, there was an odd relief in the transparency. A knock at the back door interrupted my thoughts. Grandmother moved cautiously toward the sound, and I followed, expecting another reporter seeking a different angle. Instead, we found Zoe Martinez standing on our small porch, her usually perfect appearance disheveled and her eyes red from crying. Luna, she said through the screen door. Please, I need to talk to you. Grandmother looked to me for guidance. I nodded, and she unlatched the door. Zoe stepped inside, glancing nervously toward the front of the house where the media circus continued to grow. I saw the news. Everyone's talking about what you did, but they don't understand. Understand what? I asked. How bad it really was. How much Marcus tortured you. Her voice broke slightly. I have videos too, Luna, from freshman year, sophomore year. Things I should have stopped, should have reported, but I was too scared of losing my status. She pulled out her phone, scrolling through a gallery that documented 3 years of systematic cruelty. Marcus shoving me into lockers, dumping food on my lunch tray. Leading chants that mocked my appearance, my race, my quiet nature. Zoe had recorded it all, a digital witness to abuse she'd been too cowardly to stop. "Why are you showing me this?" "Now?" I asked. "Because everyone needs to see it. The news, the school, everyone who thinks you're some kind of dangerous freak." Tears streamed down her face. "You were my friend once. I should have protected you instead of him." Officer Rodriguez had followed us to the kitchen and now stood watching this confession with professional interest. "Zoe," she said gently, "would you be willing to share those videos with the district investigation?" "Yes, all of them." Zoe wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "And I'll testify about what I saw, what I should have stopped." The front doorbell rang again, followed by loud knocking. "This is CNN. We're looking for Luna Chen." "It's getting crazy out there," Officer Rodriguez observed. "You two might want to consider laying low for a while." Grandmother moved to the window again, her expression thoughtful. "No," she said finally. "Hiding makes Luna look guilty. Better to face this with truth." "Grandmother, you did nothing wrong," she interrupted firmly. "You protected yourself after years of abuse. Anyone who says different is fool or coward." My phone rang, the caller ID showing Principal Williams. I answered reluctantly. "Luna, thank God you picked up. Where are you?" "At home, where you suspended me to." "Listen, this situation has exploded beyond anything we anticipated. The district superintendent wants to meet with you and your guardian tomorrow morning. There's also been—" He paused, the sound of shuffling papers audible. "Interest from several organizations. Martial arts schools, self-defense instructors, even a talent agency." "A talent agency?" "The video has over 2 million views in 12 hours. People are calling you everything from a hero to a vigilante. The district needs to get ahead of this before it gets completely out of hand." After hanging up, I sat at our small kitchen table while the 3 women who'd shaped this moment in different ways watched me process the implications. Outside, the media circus continued to grow. Inside, I felt the weight of becoming something I'd never intended to be a symbol. "What do I do now?" I asked. "You be yourself," Grandmother said simply. "Same girl you were yesterday, but now world sees your strength." "The video is powerful," Officer Rodriguez added. "It shows clear self-defense against someone much larger. Who attacked first? Public opinion seems to be on your side." "For now," Zoe said quietly. "But Marcus won't let this go. His family has money, connections. They'll find a way to flip the narrative." As if summoned by her words, my phone buzzed with a news alert. Prominent local businessman calls for investigation into dangerous student after son attacked at school. Marcus's father, Richard Steele, owned 3 car dealerships and had political aspirations. The statement, released through his lawyer, painted his son as the victim of an unprovoked assault by a clearly disturbed individual with access to deadly martial arts techniques. "Here we go," Officer Rodriguez muttered, reading over my shoulder. But as I scrolled through the comments on the article, I found something unexpected. Hundreds of people sharing their own stories of bullying, of being underestimated, of wanting to fight back but lacking the courage or ability. Young women especially seemed to connect with the image of someone, their size dropping a much larger aggressor with precision rather than force. #QuietGirlsRise was trending on social media. I said slowly, "I want to tell my story. All of it, not let other people control the narrative." "Luna," Grandmother began. "You taught me that sometimes the only way to survive is to fight back," I interrupted. "Well, this is me fighting back. Not with pressure points or combat techniques, but with truth." I stood and walked to the front door, Grandmother and Officer Rodriguez following with obvious concern. Zoe trailed behind, still clutching her phone. "Full of evidence. What are you doing?" Officer Rodriguez asked. "Something I should have done 3 years ago." I opened the front door and stepped onto the porch. The assembled reporters turned toward me like flowers seeking sunlight, cameras and microphones thrust forward eagerly. "My name is Luna Chen," I said, my voice carrying clearly in the crisp autumn air. "Yesterday, I defended myself against someone who has been bullying me for 3 years. I used techniques my grandmother taught me, skills passed down through generations of women in my family who learned that sometimes violence is the only language bullies understand." The crowd pressed closer, questions flying from multiple directions, but I held up my hand for silence. I'm not proud that it came to violence. I wish Marcus Steele had learned to treat people with basic human dignity. But I'm not ashamed of protecting myself, and I won't apologize for refusing to be a victim anymore. "Luna," a reporter called out, "are you some kind of trained fighter? Where did you learn those techniques?" Grandmother appeared beside me, her small frame radiating quiet authority. "I taught her," she said clearly. "My mother taught me, her mother taught her. We are not warriors, but we are not victims. There is difference." "Mrs. Chen," another reporter shouted, "some people are calling your granddaughter dangerous." "Dangerous to bullies, yes," grandmother interrupted. "Dangerous to those who think they can hurt others without consequence. If that makes her dangerous, then I am proud to be dangerous too." Officer Rodriguez stepped forward, her badge catching the camera lights. "I've reviewed the evidence extensively. Luna Chen acted in clear self-defense against an aggressor who had been tormenting her for years. The precision of her response actually shows remarkable restraint. She could have caused serious injury, but chose not to." Behind the crowd of reporters, I noticed a familiar figure standing by a black SUV, Marcus Steele, flanked by his parents. And what looked like a lawyer watched the impromptu press conference with obvious fury. "There's your real story," I said, pointing toward him. "Ask Marcus why he thought it was acceptable to spend 3 years tormenting someone smaller than him. Ask him about the racial slurs, the physical intimidation, the systematic campaign to make my life miserable. That's enough." Richard Steele pushed through the crowd, his face red with indignation. "My son is the victim here. This girl assaulted him with some kind of martial arts attack. After he shoved her first, officer," Rodriguez said calmly, "which is documented on multiple videos. A little push doesn't justify attempted murder." "Mr. Steele," grandmother said, stepping forward to address him directly, "your son is not injured. He was unconscious for perhaps 30 seconds. If my granddaughter wanted to hurt him seriously, you would be visiting hospital, not giving interviews." The crowd fell silent, sensing the confrontation between the elderly Korean woman and the wealthy businessman. "Are you threatening my family?" Richard Steele demanded. "I am educating you," grandmother replied serenely. "Your son learned yesterday that actions have consequences. Today, you learned same lesson." Zoe suddenly pushed through the crowd, her phone held high. "I have videos," she called out. 3 years of Marcus bullying Luna. Everyone needs to see what really happened." The reporters turned toward her like a tide shifting direction. As Zoe began sharing the documented evidence of systematic abuse, I saw Marcus's confidence crumble. His father's bluster faded as the ugly reality of his son's behavior was exposed in high definition. One video showed Marcus cornering me in an empty hallway, calling me racial slurs while his friends laughed. Another captured him deliberately destroying my science project, grinding it under his heel while taunting me about my weird silence. The accumulated evidence painted a picture of sustained cruelty that made my single moment of retaliation seem not just justified, but inevitable. "This changes things significantly," the CNN reporter murmured into her microphone. "What we're seeing is clear documentation of prolonged harassment, that preceded yesterday's incident. Marcus finally spoke, his voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. Those videos are out of context. We were just joking around. Joking? I turned to face him directly for the first time since the hallway. Is that what you call 3 years of making my life hell? Jokes? He couldn't meet my eyes. His earlier swagger completely evaporated. You want to know the truth? I continued, addressing both him and the cameras. I could have seriously hurt you yesterday. The technique I used was chosen specifically because it would incapacitate you without causing lasting damage. That's the difference between us, Marcus. When I had power over you, I chose restraint. The crowd was silent now, absorbing the weight of that statement. I'm not looking for revenge or fame, I said, my voice growing stronger. I just want to go to school without being terrorized. I want other quiet kids to know they don't have to suffer in silence. And I want bullies to understand that their victims might be stronger than they appear. Richard Steele grabbed his son's arm. We're leaving. Don't say anything else. As they retreated to their SUV, Marcus looked back once. Our eyes met across the crowd, and in that moment, I saw something I'd never expected. Recognition. Not of my techniques or my strength, but of my humanity. For the first time, he was seeing me as a person rather than a target. The press conference continued for another hour, but the story's arc was already set. By evening, the narrative had shifted completely. Hashtag Quiet Girls Rise was joined by hashtag Justice for Luna. And hashtag Bullying has consequences. Major news outlets picked up Zoe's videos, and child psychologists were being interviewed about the long-term effects of sustained harassment. That night, as the last news van pulled away from our street, I sat with grandmother on our small front porch, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. Do you think things will be different now? I asked. Everything is different now, she replied. Question is whether different is better. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I'm sorry, really sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything. But I needed you to know. Marcus, I showed the message to grandmother, who smiled slightly. Maybe he learns after all, she said. Fear can be good teacher, but respect is better. The school board meeting 3 days later was standing room only. The suspension had been overturned. Marcus faced a 2-week suspension and mandatory counseling. And Jefferson High announced new anti-bullying initiatives, funded partly by an anonymous donation that everyone suspected came from guilty parents, trying to repair their family's reputation. When I returned to school the following Monday, the hallways felt different. Students who'd never acknowledged my existence before nodded respectfully as I passed. Teachers who'd overlooked years of harassment now made pointed efforts to include me in discussions. The change was overwhelming and sometimes uncomfortable. But it was change nonetheless. Marcus and I maintained a careful distance. Neither of us ready for reconciliation, but both understanding that the old dynamic was dead. He'd lost his casual cruelty, and I'd gained something I'd never expected, a voice. 6 months later, I started teaching a self-defense class for teenage girls at the community center. Grandmother assisted, sharing techniques passed down through generations of women who'd learned to protect themselves in a hostile world. We called it Quiet Strength, and it attracted students from across the city. Shy girls, bullied kids, anyone who wanted to learn that physical size wasn't the only form of power. The viral video still occasionally resurfaces, shared by new generations discovering the story. People sometimes recognize me on the street, asking about that day in the hallway when the quiet girl finally fought back. I always tell them the same thing. The real victory wasn't the technique that dropped Marcus. It was finding the courage to speak my truth in front of those cameras. But late at night, when the world is quiet and I'm practicing the forms grandmother taught me in our small backyard, I sometimes remember that moment of perfect precision, the look of shock in Marcus's eyes as he realized he'd finally pushed someone who could push back harder, and I smile, because sometimes The quiet ones aren't quiet by choice. Sometimes, we're quiet because we're listening, learning, preparing for the moment when silence is no longer an option. My name is Luna Chen, and I am nobody's victim. Anymore. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.